In April 1996, the United States of America launched its new supercharged Pepsi Powered soccer league, Major League Soccer. But this was no ordinary football competition. No. With the American sporting psyche apparently allergic to draws, MLS introduced the most infamous of tiebreakers into its revamped Premier Football League, the 35-yard shootout. The MLS Shootout replicated the most exciting thing about football, watching a clearly panicked striker rush towards goal before an arbitrary shot clock counts down to 0, while their opponent holds triangle on the control pad and hopes for the best. But was it actually that bad of an idea? Sure, it looks a little batshit, but is it any worse than the, in quotation marks, lottery of a normal penalty shootout? How did they come up with the idea? Why did they get rid of it? And what the hell is that thing on the Tampa Bay Mutiny badge supposed to be? But before we answer all of that, context! Before Major League Soccer, there was the North American Soccer League, the competition that brought Pelé, Franz Beckenbauer and George Best to the United States in the 1970s. Having risen from the ashes of the super-duper short-lived United Soccer Association and National Professional Soccer League, hey, that story sounds familiar, you should go and watch it. The NASL was enjoying somewhat of a mini-footballing boom thanks to the growth of the league, the arrival of Pelé at New York Cosmos in the mid-70s, as well as a short-term boost from the 1976 United States Bicentennial Cup tournament. Hey, that too sounds like a familiar tale. You should go and watch that as well. But the North American Soccer League had a problem, or it at least thought it did. The NASL was operating in a sports landscape dominated by high-scoring games, where there were clear winners and losers, and definitely no draws. Well, apart from the occasional NHL game. And even more occasional NFL match. Whatever. League organisers, not afraid of tinkering with conventional footballing rules, had already tried ways to encourage attacking play to minimise those pesky draws. For example, the league's scoring system was a carryover from the old NPSL format, 6 points for a win, 3 for a draw, and additional points scored for every goal, up to 3 per match. And then, in 1972, the league introduced a 35-yard line in both halves of the pitch to determine the point where an attacking player can be offside from, as opposed to the halfway line as used by every other footballing nation on Earth. Aside from turning the pitch into a real-life Subbuteo field, the rule was intended to give attackers more of an advantage, though in reality goals per game went down compared to the 4 seasons prior, as it just meant a lot of teams played deeper. With draws very much still a thing, the NASL decided to just do away with them. In 1974, they implemented a classic penalty shootout to determine the result of any match that ended in a draw, with the winner of that receiving half the points of a normal victory. But not everyone was happy with the new tiebreaker rules. People were just disenchanted with the penalty kick rule because it just didn't feel fair, said former NASL Assistant Commissioner Ted Howard, echoing a complaint supporters of the English national team would go on to make for the 30 years between 1990 and 2020. Penalty shootouts were, and still are today, heavily skewed in favour of the person taking the penalty rather than the person saving it. And, particularly in the context of the NASL where they were played so regularly, it just didn't seem right that such a microcosm of the sport had become such a determining factor. For instance, 32 games ended in a penalty shootout in the league season of the 1974 NASL Championship. That was over a fifth of all matches played. If NASL rulemakers were going to stand by their stubborn no-tie stance, they needed something different, something that felt like an authentic part of the game, but also something that was exciting and wouldn't make American fans switch off. And thus, the NASL 35-yard shootout was born. Inspired by a penalty shot in ice hockey, the shootout was a one-on-one attacker versus goalkeeper battle of wits, skill, and whoever didn't the bed first. Attacking players would have 5 seconds to score from the 35-yard offside line, taking as many touches as they wanted before getting their shot away, while the opposition goalkeeper rushed towards them like a poorly trained Labrador chasing after a herd of deer. NASL officials gave the green light to the new format, which would follow a 15-minute sudden death period in the event of a draw, and the 35-yard shootout was officially sanctioned to replace traditional penalty kicks for the 1977 NASL season. It should add excitement for the fans to see players go one-on-one, said NASL Commissioner Phil Woosnam. The rest of the world will come over to our way of doing things. It's time to take the blinkers off. Tradition is a great thing, but tradition should be in a museum. Jesus Christ, Phil, chill out, mate. And so, in the opening round of fixtures of the 1977 North American Soccer League, the Aloha Stadium in Honolulu would play host to the first ever 35-yard shootout, with the home side, Team Hawaii, overcoming Seattle Sounders after a goalless draw in normal time. So, were the shootouts a hit with American audiences? Well, yes, actually. Fans lapped up the spectacle, as epitomised by the dramatic scenes of the 1978 playoff semi-final between New York Cosmos and the Minnesota Kicks, where goals from Carlos Alberto and Franz Beckenbauer gave the Cosmos victory. Dallas Tornado and Calgary Boomers coach Al Miller said in an interview, "It's real exciting for fans. For me, it's say the line Bart, a bit of a lottery. Yet, I think it's better than anything else invented in soccer." Even the players were enjoying it as well. Johan Cruyff, who played in the NASL for 2 seasons between 1979 and 1981, said, "This is spectacular and not as brutal as penalties." Though not everyone was so hot on it. More traditional fans hated the novelty of the idea, and the concept was ridiculed in the press on both sides of the Atlantic. Sports writer Peter Bodo described the shootout as a shabby innovation in New York Magazine, while the Football Journal decided to go Route 1 and called it silly. Most importantly, however, FIFA hated the whole thing, because of course they did. Fearful that some of the NASL's experimental rules, such as the 35-yard offside line, or the even more radical idea of allowing 3 substitutions a game might spread to other federations, FIFA attempted to put the brakes on American soccer's cavalier attitude towards the rules of the game. In December 1980, FIFA President João Havelange issued an ultimatum to the NASL and United States Soccer Federation: stop messing around or risk suspension from FIFA. They were warned years ago they could not simply go ahead with their own experiments. Now they are trying to get other FIFA members to follow their example. But to their credit, the NASL largely ignored FIFA and cracked on with the 35-yard shootout for 4 more years, until the league imploded at the end of the 1984 season. No FIFA sanctions were necessary, the NASL was dead, and along with it, the 35-yard shootout. Until... As the USA geared up for hosting World Cup 1994, the idea of professional club soccer in the country was back on the menu, boys. And with it, the United States Soccer Federation was once again coming up with ways to supersize the beautiful game and make it accessible for American audiences. The United States Interregional Soccer League, an amateur regional competition that had emerged following the downfall of the NASL, was used as a testing ground for a number of quirky innovations that the United States Soccer Federation was considering for the soon-to-be-launched MLS. Some of these innovations included bigger goals, kick-ins rather than throw-ins, a 60-minute clock that stops when the ball is out of play, corner kicks from the corner of the 18-yard box, and of course, the return of the 35-yard shootout. Alan Rothenberg, the president of the United States Soccer Federation, said of the new rules, "We are hoping to open up the game, make it more exciting and entertaining. The changes that don't make sense will be dropped." And thankfully, most of them were dropped. But with MLS officials fearful that American audiences still weren't psychologically prepared for ties the 35-yard shootout would make a triumphant return. On the 14th of April 1996, 27,000 witnessed Major League Soccer's first 35-yard shoot-'em-a-bob, as Dallas Burn overcame San Jose Clash 2-1 in the tiebreaker, following a 0-0 draw in normal time. But the rebirth of the running shootout would come and go quicker than a WCW title change. Due to the implementation of it, i.e. after every single draw, the shootout quickly became overexposed, turning it from a fun innovation to a stagnant sideshow. A third of all matches in 1999 ended in a shootout, and the novelty of watching a knackered striker rush 35 yards with the ball before blasting it into row Z was wearing thin with more traditional fans. With MLS attendances dropping year on year and concerns about the long-term financial health of the league, former NFL Vice President Don Garber was named as the new chairman of Major League Soccer in August of 1999 and tasked with turning the MLS-shaped ship around. Major League Soccer's new sheriff quickly looked for ways to reignite interest in the league with more conventional football fans. Millions and millions of fans in America follow soccer the way it is played across the globe. We have to go back and shore up our existence with the core soccer fan. For the new Don, this meant aligning Major League Soccer with the rest of the world, and the first thing on the chopping block was the 35-yard shootout. In November 1999, it was announced that the shootout would be binned for the following season, and for the first time since 1973, games in the top level of professional football in the United States could end in a draw, with the first of them occurring on Saturday, March 18, 2000, as Miami Fusion drew 1-1 with New England Revolution. Fortunately, fans in attendance were able to get their heads around the idea. The concept of the 35-yard shootout soon drifted into distant memory, occasionally remembered as that odd thing that the MLS tried for a few formative years to be alternative. A bit like that weird guy at university that only drank real ale and exclusively listened to Godspeed You Black Emperor. Hang on a minute. But, as with all things of this nature, the awkward memory would eventually turn into nostalgia. By the 2010s, video compilations of the old shootouts would resurface across YouTube and social media platforms, exposing the format to both younger fans and those who weren't lucky enough to experience them the first time round. And it wouldn't be too long before those in the game were floating a re-conjuring of the American tiebreaker system. In January 2017, Marco van Basten, serving as FIFA's chief officer for technical development, suggested a proposal to reintroduce the run-up shootout for the 2026 World Cup group stages to resolve draws. This is spectacular for the viewers and interesting for the player. With this idea, he has more possibilities. He can dribble, shoot, wait, and the goalkeeper responds. This is more like a typical playing situation. While the idea was binned, it wouldn't halt calls to bring the old American-style shootout back. So, should we? Let's be clear. I think the integration of the 35-yard shootout into the fabric of the NASL/early MLS was absolutely bonkers. The idea of ending every draw with the spectacle was a bit of a piss take, and something that is best left filed under shitty ideas. But, as a replacement for penalty shootouts in knockout football, well, just from a statistical standpoint, the old 35-yard shootout is fairer than penalties, with a conversion rate in the MLS of around 45% for attackers, compared to the 75% mark that you'd expect from conventional penalties. And there's no denying that it requires more skill than standing 12 yards away and hoping you don't brick it. But despite all of that, there's something to be said for the psychological purity of conventional penalty shootouts. It's a moment frozen in time, a staring contest with a ball in the middle. The 35-yard version, by comparison, is a frantic 5 seconds of chaos. It's the difference between Brett vs. Owen at WrestleMania 10 and the hardcore Battle Royale at WrestleMania 2000. And let's be honest, the novelty of the 35-yard shootout would probably wear off. Part of the reason we love these clips today is because they feel like a fever dream. Give it time and we'd all be yearning for the simpler days of classic penalty shootouts. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug. The truth is, both options are imperfect. The traditional penalty shootout oversimplifies the complex symphony of football to a single but catchy note, while the 35-yard shootout at least attempts to preserve some kind of melody, even if it does sound a little out of tune. For now, penalty shootouts aren't going anywhere, so in the meantime, why not argue about them in the comments? At the very least, it's good for my engagement metrics.